Happy Christmas in July, everybody. We have something fun that we wanted to do to celebrate Christmas in July. We are bringing you our top 5 favorite Hallmark Christmas movies that have When Calls the Heart stars in them. So this was harder than both of us thought.
We did have to narrow the field of contestants by quite a bit. We had to come up with some ground rules for each other so that we would be able to, because I don't think I could weed through every Hallmark Christmas movie ever made and make much sense out of that.
No. So here are the ground rules. Our top 5 had to have someone from When Calls the Heart who had been there for 10 episodes or more, someone who was considered a regular. We have honorable mentions that have people who made guest appearances. There are favorites, but there was nobody who was a consistent regular on When Calls the Heart, so we couldn't put them in the top 5 list. So our honorable mentions have people who have guest starred on When Calls the Heart or who were regulars for a smaller amount of time.
So we do have a few other things, and that is not to say that we don't have some favorite Hallmark Christmas movies that unfortunately have yet to have a crossover with When Calls the Heart. We have a few that we're hopeful maybe we can put on a list in a future podcast if they're, say, in season 12. That would be wonderful. Now, we did have a little overlap. We decided on a couple of the big ones. If we were really, really passionate about loving these movies, we kept the overlap on our lists. With our honorable mentions, there were a few that we both said, we probably would have put that on our honorable mention list, but the other one of us had it. And so in the interest of sharing more great movies with you, we opted to go a different way on some of them, just to share more goodness.
Yeah, that was kind of great because when we were sharing our list, we said, do you want us to surprise each other or do we want to share them? And we said, no, wait, let's share them, because then if you have one that I'm stuck in between this one and another one, then I'll let you have it on your list and then I'll take the other one. So it worked out great. Between the two of us, we've probably covered a gamut of our favorites.
Yes, and very different styles of Christmas movies too, which I think is great.
Yes.
Because if you're listening to this and trying to decide which Hallmark Christmas movies to watch that maybe you haven't caught before, it can really cover a gamut of different styles.
All right. Shall we begin?
Let's begin.
All right. Starting with number 5. My number 5 was A Wish for Christmas, which starred Paul Green, Andrea Brooks, and it even had Mark Brandon in there. So we have 3 people, 1 guest star and 2 regulars.
Yes.
And this was pre Carson and Faith. So
right?
So going back and watching it, it was like, oh wow, this is interesting.
That's a really good point. And I'm major Team Infirmary
yes
fan, so that one was close to making my list, but since you had it, I was willing to let that go. And I think I would have loved it more if they'd obviously been a romantic couple in the movie, but Lacey did a fabulous job in that movie.
Yeah, Lacey was great. I really enjoyed, because I think this is something that I've always wished I could do. I have a really hard time with confrontation, and so I would love to be able to speak my mind to anybody. I don't have a whole lot of trouble speaking my mind, but it does happen. It does happen. And so just being able to be totally upfront and honest with anybody, but still be polite and charming, because she was that. And
yes,
I loved Andrea as the best friend, because she was using Lacey's character even though she wasn't aware. And then when when Lacey spoke up and said, "No, you do this," and she said, "You're right, I do. I'm sorry." And I went, "That's what I like to hear." Yes.
Right.
So
Of
my
the
brief
concept.
description would be a very timid office worker, works for a big company, and she has been passed over promotion many, many times. And she has also had her work stolen from her and the credit given to someone else. Oh, that reminds me. The guy who played the first Thomas Higgins, he was in this one too. So I just got everybody. So, but but she has also had her work stolen from her, but she's very kind, very giving, and a lot of people take advantage of her because of that. And so she is given
Yeah.
a Christmas wish by Santa, and her wish is that she could be brave and she could speak up, and she does. And that causes her to get the credit that she deserves. And she also goes on a business trip with her boss, Paul Green, and she is able to talk a big billionaire who doesn't give the time of day to anybody, Mark Brandon, to close on this major deal.
What I love about this being on your list is that it is one of those fantasy Hallmark
Yeah,
Christmas movies where you've got like a little bit of actual magic going on. You have Santa Claus, you have a wish being granted, and it's just beyond that typical everyday Christmas story.
yeah,
And so it's nice. I love that there are a lot of those on Hallmark, but I also love that they don't have really one type of Christmas movie that they
yeah.
do. That's one of the styles that I really like is having just that magic of Christmas.
All right, Sarah.
All
Number
right.
5.
My number 5 is an older movie from Hallmark, and it is The Christmas Shepherd. And it stars Martin, Martin Cummins, and obviously Henry Gowan, which I loved because this is like the only Christmas movie that he's been in. It's one of the only Hallmark movies that he's had another role in, and it's a starring role. He was the male lead.
Yeah.
And it was back right about the time that season 1 came out. It was like right as he was becoming Gowan when this aired, and he was opposite Terry Polo, who's a very famous actress.
Yeah.
Um, and it was so great to see him in another role
That
besides
wasn't
Henry
a villain.
that wasn't a villain and that really had no like negative connotation to it.
Yeah.
And it's just so this is a movie. It is about he is a widowed father. He's got a young daughter. They're struggling at Christmas. Big surprise. And they end up fostering a German Shepherd that is lost and end up adopting it, only to discover that it did have a home with a widowed woman who was a famous author of children's books and was writing a book about the dog. And they connect, and there's a lot of back and forth about what's going to happen with this dog now because you and I both know pets are integral parts of a family. Like if
Oh,
you have an
completely.
animal in your home, that is part of your family. And they both had extremely strong connections for different reasons with this dog. And it was an amazing dog. And another fun connection with this movie is that Jill Teed played Martin's sister, who owned the animal rescue. And Jill was in season 5 of When Calls the Heart for 3 episodes as the bank investor, Mrs. Preston.
Yes.
And so there was just a fun little connection as well with that. So this was a more dramatic movie. This was a little bit more serious, a little bit more pulling on the heartstrings kind of a movie. And really, I felt just had a little bit more depth than some of the more rom-com
Mm-hmm.
version movies. And so I thought it was a fabulous way for Martin to kind of just explore a different kind of character. He was an amazing father. There is a scene near the beginning where he's trying to embarrass his daughter and does a little dance in the cafe he owns,
I
and
forgot
she's
about that.
mortified. The smoothie dance, because he was going to make her a smoothie and he just started doing this wiggle, and it
That's
was
right.
so funny. So funny. Highly recommend it to all the Gowan fans.
And especially because you will see him play something besides a villain or a reformed villain. So,
Yes.
number 4, this is going to be a huge shock to Sarah.
Oh, yeah.
December Bride, starring Daniel Lissing. What can I say?
Well,
The
you could say that your dentist knows you better than that guy.
favorite line in the whole movie. Your dentist knows you better than that guy. So what happens here is, very unwittingly, Seth, played by Daniel, introduces Layla, played by Jessica Lowndes, introduces Layla's fiance to her cousin. And the two of them hit it off, and Layla's engagement is broken. Oh, and the fiance, he played Sir Lionel in season 2. I forget his
Yes.
real name, but yes, that was him.
Viola's fiance turned husband.
Correct. Yes. So, and his name was Jack in this. And so hearing Dan go, "Hey, Jack," what? So that was just a fun thing.
And I found that in many of these movies. I did not rewatch every movie on our lists in preparation for this podcast, but I watched a bunch of them again here for Christmas in July, and I cracked up every time there was a meaningful name that would pop up.
Of something. Yeah.
Because you know that at least occasionally, maybe not all of them were on purpose, but you know occasionally they were like, let's just change that character's name to Jack or
Elizabeth.
or something that connected. Nathan was in one that Kevin McGarry was in, and they're just like, oh, they had to have added some of that just for a little fun.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So the basic premise of this is, so Layla's fiance breaks off the engagement to marry Layla's cousin. And she doesn't want to go, obviously. And she is an interior decorator and goes to redecorate the office that Dan, works in. And so they start talking, and he says, "Hey, so you don't have to go alone. I'll be your date to the wedding." And she said, "Yeah, no thanks." And then she can't get anybody else. She calls Seth and asks him to come as a last resort. And he does. And at the wedding, he says, "Pretend I said something really funny." And so they start laughing together. So when people start asking them, "Hey, when did this happen?" He said, "Oh, we just started hanging out after I saw her in my office to redecorate, and it just felt so right, and we're engaged." My favorite part is his reaction after the words "we're engaged" leave his mouth. He goes, "Oh, it's as serious as it can get. We're engaged." Just very briefly, he goes, "Oh shoot, what did I say?"
Right? It's one of those things where you and I talked about this a bunch of times, where you first watch it and you're kind of like, it's ridiculous. Who would say that? And then you're like, that's the point. Is that he doesn't even believe he said it. He didn't do it on purpose. He got very caught up.
He just got carried away.
He got very caught up with impressing them. He knew the history. He felt so guilty for being even unwittingly a part of the reason that her fiance left her. And
Yeah.
he knew that how uncomfortable she was feeling in this moment. He knew how much she didn't want to be there. She knew how much she wanted to save face in front of these people and look like she had moved on. And he's just like, I have to help her. I feel so responsible. And so
Right.
it was so ridiculous, but it was also like, that's the point, is it wasn't intentional. There have been movies where people intentionally do things like this to, because I don't know why, there's multitude of reasons, but to me, this one works because it was not truly intentional
Yeah.
to mislead people and to create this big facade of an engagement. That was just kind of what it snowballed from him panicking,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. So he offers to call everyone and apologize. But then, because she is engaged to him, she gets an offer to do a job and go and work for this huge real estate agent who would be asking her to stage all kinds of spaces to put on the market. And so she says, "Don't tell anybody we're not engaged just yet." So the whole movie is about them trying to pull off being engaged while being impressive enough to get this job, and then them falling in love as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There are two things that I really, really love about this movie, and one thing that keeps it from being closer to the top. The thing that I don't like is Layla is so mean to for so much of the movie. She is so mean to him, but he always was harboring a secret crush on her. And
Which
so,
also explains the panic.
which also explains the panic. I had her in my arms, like I panicked. But this man that he's playing is not a Scrooge. He's not somebody who hates Christmas. He's just somebody who hasn't had experience with a homemade family happy Christmas, because he comes from
Exactly.
a very wealthy family. And so I remember this one scene where he gives her his credit card and says, "Here, take my credit card, buy whatever you need to decorate it for Christmas, do whatever you want." And I said, "Dang, a wealthy man gives me a credit card and says, do whatever I want to decorate for Christmas. I go to town."
You end up with the background you have right now.
Oh, more completely.
Versus my background on my budget.
But he comes in and she's done up this front room very beautifully, and he just looks around and says, "Everything looks so beautiful in here." He's just never seen it before. And
Yeah.
so they bond over making his home look beautiful to impress this guy that she wants to be his employee.
Yeah.
And so, and then of course, I love that I hate the fact that it's an almost kiss. Hate that. But it's done very, very naturally. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they go in for each other, and then the phone rings and it breaks the moment, but instead of just and ignoring it, Seth actually says, "Someone has very poor timing." So he is wonderful to her, he is supportive of her, he encourages her. She says that she misses the gingerbread cookies that her mom makes. And so she walks into his house one day and he's baking gingerbread cookies. And that's where they almost kiss, because it was just so thoughtful. This is the other thing that I really love. Their fake affection, not only does it turn real, but they have a lot of fun with it. I remember when they're outside and her former boss is next door decorating the house. And she says, put your arm around me, pretend like we're a real couple. And he just puts his face right in her hair, like he's smelling her hair. And I went, oh, hello. And he whispers in her ear, oh, I can do better than that. And he swoops her up. And then he smiles at the former boss and says, we're practicing for the big day. When they're talking about what ring to use, she says, maybe I should just buy some costume jewelry or something. He gets his grandmother's ring and he puts it in one of the stockings on the mantle, which was just so adorable. And he says, here, go look in that stocking. And it's this beautiful ring that was his grandmother's. And he says, wear it. Wear the ring. Wow.
The interesting thing about that is that at that point, he's hooked on her.
Oh, he's because hooked.
Nobody would do that for an average fake engagement because you don't want to taint the ring you might want to use someday.
Precisely.
My number 4, I went with Time for Us to Come Home for Christmas. Now that is part of the series.
I don't have a whole lot of experience with these movies, so this is you.
This is me. So if you're not familiar, there is a series of movies that have taken place over several years on Hallmark. I don't even have the number of them in front of me. There's probably 6 or 7.
Something like that.
Now, these are produced by Blake Shelton, country music singer. They're based on a song that I think it was either co-written with his mother or his mother has helped with the whole process.
Oh.
So it's like a family affair for them. And they decided to make them into some Christmas movies. And basically, all of these movies take place in the same universe with occasional overlaps or references to what happened in other movies, but they are not sequels to each other and they're not truly connected movies. They are all standalone stories, completely unrelated to each other. But occasionally there have been cute nods to each other. And there's a song that plays, the original song that it was based on, that has played throughout each movie and somehow helps the characters like with the lyrics in the song, and it's very meaningful to them. And so that's kind of a cool concept in and of itself, that you've got these movies that are kind of in their own world, but they're not really connected. You can kind of have some connection without having to watch them in order or having to watch all of them. This is the one that starred, I'm going to tell you the actual stars of the movie, was Lacey Chabert and Stephen Huszar. And they did a fabulous job. My When Calls the Heart connection is Vienna Leacock, who plays Angela Canfield. She plays a girl who is spending Christmas with her father. Her parents are divorced. She does not want to be there. She wants to be with her mom in the home she lives in most of the time and doing her regular Christmas routine. And her father has taken her on a vacation away from everything she knows. And she likes her father, but she just does not want to be there.
Who's her father?
Her father, I'm glad you asked, is played by Doran Bell, who plays her Uncle Jacob on When Calls the Heart, which is such a fun connection.
Yes.
Now, I picked this movie also because this is a true ensemble movie. There are about 6 different side stories happening all simultaneously. So the concept of this movie is Lacey is a woman whose mother has passed away. She's spending like the first Christmas without her mom alive, and she's really sad about it. She gets an invitation that she thinks is from her boss. Her boss has said he's sending her a Christmas gift the same day she gets this envelope, and it says, a room has been reserved for you at this inn for Christmas. And she thinks that's the gift from her boss. So she goes and she doesn't question it. And what you find out as you travel through this movie is that many of the guests at this inn at Christmas all received a similar invitation. And they all thought they'd received it from somebody special to them. There's a gentleman who is a musician. He's an older gentleman. His wife has passed away. He thought she left it for him before she passed away because they had spent time at this inn when they were younger. There's another single woman who's recently divorced and is feeling all alone, and she thought she wanted in a sweepstakes. There are so many different things that have come together and brought this group of people together at this inn. Stephen Huzar is the owner of the inn, and he's struggling. He used to come to the inn when he was a little boy, and so that's why he bought it when he was having kind of a midlife crisis. And all of these people are coming together at Christmas, and you start getting these clues as to how they could have gotten there, and how there is a connection between all of them, even though they didn't know it. And it's just such a good example of one of the Hallmark stories where so many different things are woven together, to create just a very touching story. And I think you and I like a lot of stories like that, but I think especially a Christmas story just brings up the magic. It brings up the magic without it necessarily being a fantasy element,
Fantasy magic.
Yeah, it's not necessarily fantasy magic, but it's just that heartwarming, true Christmas spirit kind of magic.
I think you may have convinced me to watch it.
You should at least watch this one. If you don't watch all in the series, and that's the beautiful thing about the series that I like, is that you don't have to watch them all.
Right.
For any of it to make sense. They all work completely beautifully on their own.
Number threes. My number 3 is another Daniel Lissing.
You're kidding.
Shocking, I know. Christmas in Love with Brooke Dorsey as well. Probably one of my favorite things about this movie is the meet cute. It is so not cute. It's terrifying, actually, because he is a rich corporate guy who comes to the headquarters of this bakery that his father owns, and it started there. Missouri, I believe. The corporate headquarters is now in San Francisco, which just happens to be her favorite city in the world. Go figure. But so he comes and he is learning the business because he's about to take over for his dad. So he comes incognito to kind of learn all facets of the business.
That's right. Very undercover boss.
Undercover boss, yes. And he refuses to give up his Italian shoes for decent boots for winter, slips on the ice, lands flat on his back. Brooke opens the door just as he sits up, whacks him in the face, and he goes back down.
I forgot about that part. Yes. Oh my gosh.
Neat.
Yes. And great physical acting.
Oh, very, very good physical acting. So that's the summation. So go and watch it to see how it ends and all of that. But one thing that really spoke to me is she is an incredible crafter. She makes beautiful wreaths. She is always making wreaths for her mom to put at her craft shop. She gets all the craft supplies from her mother's shop. And then she makes wreaths for the firehouse, for her own home, for her parents, for her mother's shop. She just makes wreaths for everybody. And he tells her that she should set up an online business. And this came out right when Sarah and I had decided we were going to write a novel together. And we were feeling really, really intimidated. And his whole manner was, go for it. Give it a shot. What have you got to lose? What would you do if money was no object? What is it that you love that you want to do? And I went, those are some really good points. And so it really spoke to me. And she also makes him a San Francisco wreath, which is adorable. Whoever made those wreaths in real life is just
Yeah.
insanely talented.
Yes.
And so I won't tell you any of the drama or anything like that, so you can go and watch the movie. But once again, you had a mid-movie kiss.
Right.
I love it when we actually get to see them together. That's why I don't like the kiss in the last 2 minutes. And before he actually kisses her, he kisses her on the cheek. And, it's fun to see them be playful, be romantic, be flirty, and also be really tough on each other and be really straight with each other. So
Yes.
yeah,
Very honest.
yeah,
It's odd that I actually say honest since she doesn't fully know who he is for part of the movie, but
yeah.
in terms of like their personality and their beliefs, they are very honest with each other.
Right. It's speaking of honesty, it's actually really funny because in all of those old hometowns, you've got the inn or the bed and breakfast that is really, really cozy and beautiful, and they come right out and say the lodge, it stinks. I was like, oh, they're not afraid to do that.
Yeah, no, they were trying to kind of set it apart in that way and really, yeah, be more realistic
Yeah.
in a lot of senses.
Yeah. So I love it. I love it. And I love watching Dan as an actor because he is so talented and he creates these characters that seem so simple, but the way he plays them, it's so complex. He has so many layers on top of each other that I love watching him. And Brooke's character was much kinder to him than
That was what edged it out.
that's what edged it ahead. Yes.
I would have to say I would probably slightly edge that above December Bride for my own personal preferences as well. I just thought that the chemistry between Brooke and Dan was just a touch better. Um, but I would say the writing probably on December Bride. It's so funny.
Oh, yes. And it was also really funny in Christmas in Love to watch Brooke's parents because they didn't know who Dan was. They didn't know that he was from corporate, even though they knew his father very well. They'd had his father stay with them several times,
Mhm.
but they didn't know him. And so just to watch them take in this guy that, for all they know, is just one of the corporate guys and
Yeah.
take him in like family and put him to work like family. It was, yeah, all of that was really sweet. Number 3 for you, my dear.
Number 3 for me, drum roll, Operation Christmas. So main stars of this movie are Trisha Helfer and Mark Blucas. However, our When Calls the Heart main character that is in this movie is Jada Lily Miller, who plays Allie. Obviously a main character, obviously another one of the kids, so not as in the forefront all the time. So I really wanted to focus on that. But another reason I went with this is it is also starring Jill Teed, who was in Christmas Shepherd. Also has Preston Vanderslice.
Oh, Preston, love Preston.
Who was briefly a Mountie on When Calls the Heart.
It's the first time I ever saw him, and I just went, "Oh, more,
Love,
please."
love him, and he's been in so many other amazing. He's had amazing roles. He's
He
really
has.
had some really great roles um, on Hallmark. And then another one of the kids in this movie is not directly on When Calls the Heart, but it was Megan. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right. Charpentier or Carpentier, and it is Janaea's sister, who
Oh,
Janaea played
yes.
Laura on When Calls the Heart. So it took me a few minutes because I was like, she looks really familiar. And then I was like, oh, it's because she looks a lot like her sister,
Well,
who is on.
and she's on Signed, Sealed, Delivered.
That's right.
Yes,
Yes,
she's in two of those movies. So
that's
yeah,
right.
that's
Yeah.
why she looks so
So
familiar to you.
lots of connections, lots of great characters. This is going into another genre that we haven't talked about yet. There's so many different types of Christmas movies.
The
This is one of the
military.
military Christmas movies.
Can
And
I,
there
can
are
I
so
just
many.
say, can I just say, this was one of
Yeah.
them that she said, this is on my list. I said, oh, good, because I couldn't fit it.
Yeah. It is definitely one of the top. It's not my top military movie that they have on Hallmark, but it's definitely near the top. There are so many different ways you can even do the military Christmas movie, right?
Yeah.
And what I love about this one is, and I'll directly bring this up later talking about another movie, but in this movie, they meet and kind of have a romantic connection at the beginning. They're in Aspen, I believe.
Yes,
They're
yes.
in
They're on
Aspen skiing with
vacation with their
kids,
kids.
vacationing for the holidays. Um, Trisha's character has two children, and he has one, or
Yes,
maybe the other way around. I can't
because
remember. Yes,
his is
that's
Jada.
right.
Yeah,
His
his
is
is
Jada,
Jada.
and they meet all together. The kids love each other. They're hanging out. They're having a wonderful time. They make arrangements to go skiing together the next day. Um, they make a point to joke about how he has this really old flip phone when he puts her number in it so that he can call her. She doesn't take his number, unfortunately. They're just going to connect that way. Silly way that always
Bad
happens
idea.
in movies.
Yeah.
And then, oh, his daughter bumps him in the bathroom when he's shaving or washing up or something, and the phone goes in the
She
sink.
hands him his phone, but he misses because she's
He
not paying
misses, and it just like
attention.
falls
In the water.
in the water. Phone is dead. He now has no way to contact her. He tries leaving her a message the next morning. He's called. He's
He's
called
called
back to
away.
duty and
Yeah.
has to leave to deal with a military assignment. And he leaves a message for her, and guess what? That darn front desk person at the hotel does not give it to her. She gets
Shocking.
distracted. Strange. And I've been a front desk person at a hotel, so I say that knowing, like, come on. There's no reason why you should have missed this person. You knew exactly when they were coming and what they were going to look like.
Oh man.
No reason.
Yeah.
I totally blame that person. Anyway, an entire year goes by, she thinking that he just did not want to have anything to do with her. And then she gets a new job. She moves with her children. Her new job is at a bank, and their bank's biggest community outreach project of the year is put in her lap, which is working on the toy drive with the local military base. Yep. And guess who her liaison is with the military?
They solve it fairly quickly. It's not something that goes on for the whole movie. They clear up the misunderstanding very quickly, which is something that I loved. I'm like,
that
thank
is
you
what
for not being petty.
No, but they also make it realistic. She is
Yes.
upset. It isn't something she can just get over at the drop of a hat.
Right.
She does have to work through it a little bit, but they're honest and open with each other and talk it through. And she does feel better. She runs into his mother at the store, and she kind of backs up his story of like, oh, he searched for you. He tried so hard to reach out to you, and then he just couldn't find you last year. So that helps her to feel that way. But yes. Bottom line, what I was going to say is what's meaningful to me in this movie is that she's never been around military life. Mm-hmm. She hasn't grown up in it. He grew up in it. His father was in the military, so he knew what it was like to be the son of a soldier. Yeah. And now he's been a soldier, and now he's raising his daughter that way. This is his calling, so to speak. Yeah. He's very, very passionate about being in the military. It means a lot to him. He's worked very hard. And it is his way of life. And he's not looking to change that. He's looking to enhance his life and have meaning in his life with a family. But this is who he is. Mm-hmm. And she's not used to that. She's very upfront. I don't know if I can handle that. He's very upfront. I don't want to ask you to have to handle that. Like, they're both
they're adults
talking? They're adults about it. he has a great heart to heart with his mother about like, how can I ask this of her? How
Mhm.
can I put her in this situation when this isn't something she's used to? She is very worried. Like, they're both very aware of each other's feelings and each other's fears and comfort levels.
Yeah.
And they're very honest with each other about that. And I found that to be very refreshing.
Mhm.
And as much as it was kind of, she does go through a period of time where she's like, I can't do this. And I, as much as you're kind of like that, oh gosh, like you don't want to tear apart this soldier before they have to go away for a while and like have that on
Mhm.
their mind. But at the same time, there is that piece of honesty where you're like, that's really great that she's not leading him on. She's
Yes.
not trying to have she's not afraid of being honest because of the situation they're in. She's still being very honest and forthright and everything. And so I really just loved that honesty piece. And there was never ever a single question of like, will you give that up for me? You know,
Yeah.
there have been many movies where not necessarily where they're giving it up for somebody, but they're like, oh, magically, he just got offered a job in town and he's going to not re-up in the military and now he'll be home with you. But I find them more often than not in the military movies, they're coming up on the end of their service
Yeah.
and they're trying to decide if they're going to sign up again and
Yeah.
reenlist. And more often than not, that's the case on the military Hallmark movies.
Yeah.
And they're trying to make that decision. And I loved that in this one, that was not even a question. That is who he is. If they're going to be together, that is something she will have to accept.
Mhm.
And it was not ever a question of, you know, oh, she was so worried about it, but no, it's not a problem. Like, because in real life, this is just, there are situations, it might not be the military, but something else. There are situations that aren't perfect and aren't ideal. And it's not wrong if that's not for you, but you do have to decide and make a decision. Is this something I can adjust to? Is this something I can be a part of? Is this a deal breaker for me? And it's okay if it is, but you have to decide and you have to be honest with yourself and honest with your potential partner. And that was something that I just loved about this one. And there was one line I was going to say, it's okay to feel scared. It just means you care.
The mom says that, doesn't she? His mother says it.
I believe that was, yes, I
I'm
believe that was.
almost certain because I remember that. The thing that I loved, there are two things that I loved most about this movie besides the very, very touching ending, which I'm not going to give away. Uh, but there are two things that I really loved. One, they had them in a comfortable relationship.
Mhm.
Sucker, sucker,
Yeah.
right here. Sucker for it.
Multiple kisses, people.
Multiple. And I specifically remember one scene when he's about to leave to go back on another tour, and he just says, let's just make the most of the time we have. And he just reaches out, grabs her face gently, grabs her face, pulls her in, kisses her, and it is so natural. It shows the comfort level. It shows that these two are in a committed relationship. And the other scene that I really love that I think happens right before that is when they are having Christmas, their two families, because he is going to be
Early.
gone. He's going to
Mhm.
be gone on Christmas. And so they are having Christmas, their two families, early so that he can celebrate with them. Oh my gosh, tear jerker, so
Yes.
much.
Beautiful, beautiful story. Highly recommend.
Mhm.